Yo, everybody, welcome to the Do Work College Tour. Listen, for you students, and I see you students signing up, I know you're getting ready for Thanksgiving. Let's just be careful out there, okay? Let's not go home and get mom and dad all COVIDed up and whatnot. Let's be safe. Let's be smart. But listen, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about getting work done, figuring out how to manage your post-pandemic career, and how to basically handle and crush college right now. So let's go to the experts here. I've got an ensemble cast of experts. Sydney, what's going on at University of Kentucky?
Hi, so it's going well. This semester's wrapping up, but Kentucky's done a pretty great job at continuing to keep the spread somewhat under control, and we've been here all semester and able to partake in both in-person and hybrid classes.
Cool. And we're going to talk to you a little bit about crushing college. You got some good tips. You're doing some video editing for the Do Work project, and I appreciate you sticking that out. It's been good, and we're definitely going to share some of your stuff. I also have Justin, who's going to be on the Do Work Career Bootcamp, but most importantly, he's here now to dispel myths. Justin, what's going on, and where are you dialing in from here today?
Coming from Orlando, Florida. It's been a wild ride with COVID and everything, but it's been super interesting just to pay attention to everything that's been going on and hearing what everyone is saying from the student perspective. So looking forward to just chatting and talking about that too.
Yeah, for sure. So this was me like trying to come up with questions before the show, like what should I be asking these guys? But listen, I listened to your the Declassified College podcast. I listened to the most recent episode about micro internships. What the hell is that all about? What do students need to know?
Yeah, so this concept was something that I wish I knew about when I was in college. So like one of the hardest things to do is find that first internship, right? Because from the company standpoint, they want to make sure that whoever they bring on, it's someone that can do the job. But from the student standpoint, it's like when you're trying to find that first internship, you don't really have much experience on your resume, or you might have some clubs, maybe you have a good GPA, but that's really about it. Now, micro internships is this term that Jeffrey Moss, the CEO of Parker Dewey, kind of came up with. And it's basically a project-based internship. So instead of a 10-week long summer internship that's full-time, 40 hours a week, this is more of a project-based, whether it's data entry, a specific marketing project, a specific like product management idea, whatever it may be. You get to work on it and work with the team for a specific amount of time. They're all paid on the platform, and you can add that onto your resume as well. So it's a great place to get started and can kind of really bridge relationships with some of these large companies that are on the platform.
Listen, and I looked into this Parker Dewey guy. He's been following me. I've been following him on LinkedIn. Nothing like crazy. No other social platforms. Totally legit. Like I'm amazed that more students don't know about this. So totally check it out. Sydney, you're a student. You essentially have created your own internship and done your own stuff. But what do you think about micro internships and about going and getting what you want to do, like going and finding the stuff? What's your philosophy?
Absolutely. So a term that I think a lot of people may have heard is kind of the gig economy concept, where especially young people are doing more like odd jobs, if you will. But that kind of experience is incredibly valuable, like Justin said, because especially if you haven't had that formal first internship, when you're first starting to look for something, they want to see that you have demonstrated those skills. And when you work on small projects that help build those skills, not only are you learning, but you have things to show for that and products to show for that as well.
Yeah, right on. And I think your profile on LinkedIn and your portfolio is a great example of someone that's going out and like just doing this stuff, which is quite inspiring. We have a really good cast of people here on the call. If you guys have questions, put them in the comments. Big up to Akita Gray from eCornell joining. Appreciate you the shout out there. We got a lot of cool people. Jeff Seville is always tuning into the shows that I'm doing. I don't know why, but I maybe it's the entertainment value. Anyway, appreciate you guys joining. If you have questions, toss them in. So I want to talk about college. I want to talk about she's in the other room. My daughter, she's 18, so I'm gonna keep it low. But like, should you go to college right now? Is it going to be worth it? What's your thinking on college decision making right now, Justin?
I think college is a super interesting place right now, right? There's this huge argument of, is it worth it? Is it not? Obviously, tuition is kind of rising, but there's this big conversation around, should you take a gap year? And I think there's a good argument that this year and upcoming next year, because it doesn't seem that COVID is really going away anytime soon, that you should be able to take a gap year if you have the financials to do it. Now, the caveat to that is, if you are going to take a gap year, you have to make it worth it. Now, an example of one of my friends that I didn't even realize he was taking a gap year, and he hasn't even told his parents that he's taking a gap year either, but he's just doing it all online. I was talking to him, and he said that he has completed like 50 plus Coursera courses, and he's gotten numerous amounts of certificates over the past 6 months or so. And because of that, he actually got a job offer from like Walmart if he wanted to take it. And like, this was a solid job offer in tech that he didn't necessarily have to wait until he graduated to obtain. So if you use it correctly, this year could be extremely beneficial to you, but it's also not an excuse to just take a gap year if you're just going to sit and play the new Xbox or the new PlayStation, right? If you're going to take a gap year, make sure that you're using it correctly, because honestly, you can basically play Xbox or PlayStation or just watch YouTube all day while attending Zoom University. So you might as well get the degree at that point if that's all you're going to do.
100%. Listen, a lot of the reasons people are selecting colleges is sort of vague to me anyway. Like, I have my own test bed, but I talk to a lot of students. I think the idea of it being some equalizer is sort of a whole like big topic, but I think you're spot on. Like, the other thing is get skills. I connected with Sydney, even though she's in the same area in Raleigh, North Carolina area as me, because she has some content out there that's like, wow, this person is, I don't even know how old you are. Like, you're young, you just started college. So, but you're putting out this amazing videos. And I was like, wow, that's like someone I got to like know and bring into the do work project. So cool stuff. But Sydney, I got to ask you, like, in terms of crushing college, you're an organized person. Like, you're a scholar, like you're a smart woman. Like, what's your secret to staying organized? What tips do you have for college students just starting, like to keep organized and to keep focused, especially with all this Zoomness going on?
Definitely. I am wrapping up my first semester of college, so in no way am I a pro, but there's are some things that have been vastly different with this year. And with some of my classes being entirely online, it's been really helpful for me to utilize like online tools that help me keep up with the online work. One of the note-taking apps that I use is GoodNotes, and I use that for my psychology class, and it's very helpful to download the instructor's PowerPoints, and then I can write directly on them, which is just really handy. And just going like paper-free, I know a lot of people are doing with the online schooling. And overall, it can be extremely overwhelming to get assignments and not keep track of them. So, I mean, as cliche as it is, make to-do lists of day-to-day things, and then have a larger like month-to-week calendar where you have all your assignments. And that's honestly how you're going to keep track of it all.
Yeah, and I've got the little link down there in the banner I just created, because I'm a huge multitasker. And you could check out the tips that we have, including those exact tools that you're talking about. So let's get back at it. We've got some questions coming in. I love it because I love questions. Otherwise, like, why do you get on the live stream? You're not going to watch it later anyway. Couple cool questions here. Ryan's up first, and the question is back to micro internships, trying to keep me on track here, Ryan. Appreciate that and appreciate the question. What's the ideal way to go for applying, waiting for the opportunities for your university, or going solo and searching for the positions? Now, if it were me, I would say I'm not waiting for anybody, right? It's like the age-old thing that happens in the spring with college students where they decide that, oh, I should go to like career services or get some help, creating my resume 2 weeks before they graduate. I didn't even do that. I just graduated and, partied all summer long. And let me tell you where that got me. So my philosophy is like, get at it. Justin, you're an expert in this area. In fact, you talk about micro internships on the last episode of the podcast. What's the way to go here?
Yeah, I mean, so the last episode, it's only like 5 minutes, so feel free to check that out for like a quick intro.
It's the best part about it, by the way.
It's
the best part.
Yeah, it's short and sweet, right? That's what we try to do here. But to answer that question of what's the ideal way, I would say check out Parker Dewey. They're the only company that I know of that offers specifically micro internships, and it's a completely free offering, to my knowledge, for students. So what you just do, you just sign up, create an account, and then there will be a numerous amounts of like micro internships that are offered depending on like your major and what you're trying to get into, and then just start applying. I don't necessarily think that there's a way to kind of go out there and search for that specific micro internship because I think it's just such a new space. I think if you go and talk to anyone at most companies and you say like, hey, do you have any micro internships available? They're probably going to look at you like, what do you even mean? But if you go through like a job board, unfortunately, that's probably the only way they're going to be able to find some of these small projects to work on. That's where I would start.
Yeah, for sure. And, I want to talk about job boards quickly and ask you some questions about this. The great thing about people continuing to come on my show is they know like I don't script anything. Like I get all nervous beforehand, think about what I'm going to say, but really here's my question. So like, what's the strategy for, what is the deal with like the hidden job market? Is that like a real thing, Justin, or what is it and why do we care about it?
Yeah, so it's a real thing and it's not at the same time. And what I mean by that is you'll see statistics like 80% of jobs aren't found on like LinkedIn, Indeed, and all that sort of stuff. And that's like true to an extent. And I've used that stat, of course, just because it's sort of like a headline read and it gets people's attention. But the sort of reasoning behind that is at the very beginning, when companies are starting to hire for positions, they typically won't go out and push it out on like a LinkedIn or an Indeed. They'll try to hire within first, whether that's promoting someone or asking the people on their team if they have any referrals. So that's where the hidden job market initially starts. Now, does that job eventually make it onto LinkedIn Indeed? Most likely, but that's probably not until weeks or maybe months after that initial job search has sort of started. So I think where that hidden job market really starts to play is getting your foot early on into that job search process, which is very important. Which I'm sure, Rob, you know a ton about. Like if you're one of the first names that people read about, you probably have a better chance of getting seen compared to number 99 or 110.
100%. And one thing that I'm gonna divulge right now. I don't normally talk about this, but I'm a recovering recruiter. At 15 years, not recruiting, and I learned a lot. I hired a lot of people. But one thing that I do know is like when we talk to job seekers about this sort of mythical stuff, the reality is you got to hustle and you got to hustle really hard. It's not uncommon to like you apply for 50, 60 jobs. And then you're like, oh, no one's responded to me. Yeah, it's basically you got to create a massive reservoir of leads is what you need to do. And I want to talk about that with you a little bit, Justin, because you have an interesting perspective on LinkedIn as something that, well, it's not really a resume, is it?
Yeah, 100%. It's a landing page. That's what I like to think about it. And to kind of pull it back to go full circle, like a brief story in terms of my background, like I was applying to 50 plus internships my sophomore year, and I thought that I was going to get at least one. I had like a near 4.0 GPA, joined the student clubs, did everything I was supposed to do. But what ended up happening was I couldn't find an internship, didn't even get interviews. But by the time I graduated, I had 5 internships. And 4 out of those 5 internships, I never really applied for it until I was asked to apply by someone on the actual team. So what I figured out is when it comes to applications, make sure that you have a way in, because unless you have a way in, it's going to be very hard for your application to even be seen. And then from the LinkedIn standpoint of everything, you want to make sure that when someone lands on your LinkedIn page, they know exactly what you are and what you do. They don't care if you're a student. They know that you're a student. They can see that by your education and by your school. They want to know, what are your skills? How can you help the company? And then what can you do for them? So you want to make sure that your LinkedIn page is optimized for that. Because if I go onto your page and your headline reads student from the University of Central Florida, I don't care. Like, that's not going to help me. There's literally 70,000 other students from the University of Central Florida. What makes you different, and why should I invest my time to learn more about you?
Yep, 100%. You know, I think Kevin Fallon has it right. I appreciate your comment. And I pick on career services people all the time. Like I do, because I think it's like an unloved function. But this guy gets it. And if you read his profile, you'll notice on the headline, it's building the workforce of the future, strong and prepared. Like, you almost like want to see what this guy's all about. But what he does is he's a director at career services at Salisbury University and a speaker on this exact topic. He's a guy you should follow on LinkedIn, by the way, for sure. And I appreciate the add on there, Kevin. That's awesome. So, oh, hey, Ben Shipman. Met this guy recently, superstar. Probably going to be trying to get a job from him pretty soon or someday for sure. Home from college. That's where he does an internship with those guys. They have a lot of unique content. So I wanted to give a shout out to them for sure. But I could talk about the hidden job market and the myths of that all day long. But, the key question here that keeps coming up is, and I love this question, Katie, about, you're teaching this course, and what's the one piece of advice you'd share with current students? I'm an old guy. So like, my advice would be, if you're going to do one thing, just get one of the top skills that people are hiring for. And it doesn't need to be Python programming, by the way, because listen, the majority of people that don't do that. Like, it's a very small sliver. I'm talking about, like, if you're great at social media, learn how to get really good at it. And then if you know how to make a pivot table, which I just learned recently on LinkedIn Learning. Honestly, I'm embarrassed to tell you, but learn how to do these things, because when you're in a line of people trying to get a job, and you're going to be, especially coming out of school right now or recently graduated, you've got to have something that's a verifiable skill. Go look at Sydney Turner's profile, and you'll see that she's basically saying, I have these skills. No one else has them like I do, and you should be talking to me about a job, and you should. So, Sydney, I want to ask you, you're a current college student. What advice would you give your peers? One pearl of wisdom.
I'm going to make it 2, but I'll make it one of them kind of short. So what you said about getting those hard skills, one of the best things that one of my high school teachers was able to do for us, I took Adobe Design and Adobe Visual and Video, and we took our certification tests, and it was all this big thing, and everyone made a fuss about it. But at the end, we were certified in all these Adobe programs, and I can use that and say, I actually have this proven certification that I know how to use this program, as well as here's all the works that I can do with it. So I do think there are so many online resources, and that you can get those certifications and skills that will just boost your chances of getting like your foot in the door. And then my big piece of advice is, beyond going out and like hustling for those like micro internships and opportunities, create your own. So one of my peers, he was trying to get into web design, and he reached out to a local business, a local bakery, and reached out to them, said, hey, I feel like I could streamline your online ordering, make your overall website more appealing, more user-friendly, all those kinds of things. And he'd never done this before. And in a couple seconds, he was like, I'm a student. I want to try out web design. Can I help you like upgrade your website? And they said yes. And that's just one thing and he was able to get paid from that as well. And so that's one example of reaching out to people and offering value based on your skills and your interests.
Super smart, and I appreciate you sharing. Listen, if you have 2 tips, 5 tips, whatever, the more tips, the better. for sure. Want to talk about tips? Want to talk about LinkedIn tips? I work at LinkedIn. Been there over a decade. I'm obviously a big fan. I bleed the blue. But what I'm finding out is other people have LinkedIn tips, and they're actually more badass than mine. Justin, I know that people can get at the 6 tips you have, the PDF you have, but what are some of those tips for building an awesome LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, I mean, definitely check out those 6 tips. So I'm going to try and cover things that aren't in there already. So the number one cheat code that I have for most people is most people don't realize that if I go to your LinkedIn profile right now, there is a section on the right-hand side that will typically say people also viewed, depending if you've turned this off or not. And most people have it on. So what that will do is, let's say someone has a better headline than you or something more interesting in their profile picture that catches the recruiter's attention when they're on your profile. As they're scrolling down, they'll click off of their page and then go onto that other person's page. So that's something that you don't want to do. So like, for instance, where Rob, like you can see it a little bit on Rob's side, on Sydney's page, on that right-hand side where it says people you may know or people also viewed, that's what you can turn off. People you may know, that's automatic. You can't really turn that off. At least I haven't figured out a way to do that. But the people also viewed section, you can turn that section off. So you just want to make sure that that's off, because that's just going to take more distractions off of your profile. So that's a quick little LinkedIn tip right there. The second one that a lot of people don't realize is the skills section is incredibly important on your LinkedIn profile as well. So a lot of students will put like 5 or 10 skills on there, but what you're going to want to do is figure out what keywords that you want to rank for. And you can figure that by just going to like a jobscan.co or something along those lines and copy and pasting a job description that you want to go for, putting that into JobScan, and then that'll shoot out what the most common words in that job description is. And then whatever those words are, whatever those skills are, you want to put that in your skill section. So I think you have either 30 or 50. I'm not 100% sure what the like limit is for skills.
If we were at the team edu sales team meeting, we'd have a Slido right now. I usually come in last place, but I'm going to go with 50 on this answer. Any LinkedIn people watching, and I know you are, if I'm wrong, let me know. But I think it's 50 skills, and you're absolutely right. The other thing you could do is just basically do a quick Google search. Every year at LinkedIn, we do an article where we analyze a lot of data and figure out, well, what are skills that are getting people and students jobs, and literally get those onto your profile like minimally immediately.
Yeah. So like then you have those skills, right? And as you get more people to sort of upvote you or endorse your skills, that allows you to rank higher whenever a recruiter is searching for someone with those skills. And then you might say, okay, well, Justin, that's great. How do I get people to get me endorsements? That's where the fun kind of comes into play. So you obviously ask your friends, hopefully they're good friends and they'll just endorse you automatically, right? That's a sign of a true friend if they're willing to help you on your career. But once you run out of friends to kind of ask for that, you want to sort of, there's this old concept on Facebook. Some might remember it, some might not. It's called like poke wars. And what you would do on Facebook is like you go and like to their page and you can poke them, and then they would poke you back. And that's similar what you want to do with endorsements. You can go to someone's page and just like endorse them for like 3 or 5 things that you know that they're pretty good at. And then they'll get notifications for that. And then most of the time they'll just endorse you back because they want to sort of reciprocate the same favor. So that's a way to do it without having to outright asking like, hey, Rob, can you endorse me for public speaking or blah, blah, because that's always awkward. You can always just go to the page, endorse them for a few things, and then most of the time they'll endorse you back.
Yeah, to tack on to that, and then we'll get to your question, Sabrina. To tack on to that, like the other little trick here is like go up into your summary and sprinkle that with some of the terms of the skills that you actually have. And I'm not talking about Microsoft Outlook. I'm talking about like the skills that are in demand. So sprinkle those in lightly and make it come alive. So question from Sabrina, and we appreciate the question. Do you guys recommend any specific certifications that stand out to employers for internships, such as any Microsoft? Funny, I work at Microsoft, just kind of picked on Microsoft Outlook, don't care. But love me some Microsoft. Just notice my boss is on there watching the show as well. I got to be careful what I say now. But listen, back to your question. There's definitely some certifications. Like, I think these simple things like verifiably knowing a pivot table, verifying that you could use Photoshop at some level or whatever it is. It doesn't need to even be technical. If you have LinkedIn Learning, for example, and by the way, most schools do for free. They pay for it for you, but you don't know about it. You should ask your career services or your teacher or whatever. But the key thing there is, yeah, you should have some of the Microsoft stuff on there, but you should have some other stuff that differentiates you. What do you think about that, Sydney? Like, you're in college, you're thinking about your career, you have a specific path, or not a specific path, but you've got sort of a general game plan that's probably not super linear. What are you thinking about in terms of skills, and how are you getting informed about what employers are looking for?
So I do know that Microsoft skills were something very heavily pushed on us, at least at my high school, and I think in my county for high school. But I think that's probably like the most basic, I don't know how else to describe it, certification that you could get for things like Word or PowerPoint. And at this point, like college-age students, like we are familiar with using like online Word documents and word processing. Like it's part of our schoolwork. Like we understand how to use those, whether we took a certification or a class or not. But there's LinkedIn Learning. There's also like Google has a digital garage full of classes. I would recommend two things personally that I would like to learn more about are SEO, search engine optimization, and UX design. And I'm going to probably look over winter break on some free online courses because they do exist if you go out and search for them.
Right on. Cool. So a lot of chatter here in the discussion board in the comments section here, which is great. Here's a question from Nick. How does someone market themselves to companies if you feel like a jack of all trades and the master of none? That is a great question. Let's go to you first, Justin. Like, what's your thinking on the next question?
I think, I mean, this is sort of the number one, like one of the number one things that I've seen from students who have been able to find internships and jobs during this time right now. It's like, no matter whether you feel like a jack of all trades or if you are a master of something, you're going to need to be able to build something. And like a quick story to show why is the reason that you want to build something is everyone ends up with a degree, right? At the end of the day, that's what we're all going to school for. But you can't really tell if someone actually has the skills on that, or did they just pull up Quizlet while they're taking an exam on Zoom, right? So the way to prove that you actually have the skills to pay the bills is to build something up on the side. And what that could look like, right, is building a community. If you can build a community that shows that you know marketing. Now, you might not be an expert at marketing, but you can at least show that you were able to put 1,000, 2,000 students into a Slack chat or a GroupMe or whatever it may be. Like that's what's able for you to be able to market yourself and show like, hey, I actually know something. I'm not just saying that I do on my resume. Like an example to pull it all back together, the story that I had when I was interning at a company, a large financial company, they brought us all into a training room like the first couple weeks of the internship. And they're like, everyone raise their hand if they know how to do a pivot table. So funny that Rob brought that up. And like, I didn't know what a pivot table, like I knew what a pivot table was, but I had never done it before. So I didn't raise my hand, but everyone else wanted to raise their hand because you want to look good in front of the people talking to you and the people that are potentially hiring you after your internship. What ends up happening is she asked them, okay, everyone raises their hand. Who wants to show me an example using this data? Nobody volunteered because no one actually knew how to do it. So like, that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to front and say that you know something and then not be able to back it up. And that's what a lot of people's degrees are doing for them. You have a degree in marketing, but then I go and ask you like, oh, what's a landing page? And you don't know what a landing page is. Well, you probably don't know what marketing is. And that's the way that you can get over that hump of does this student actually know what he or she is talking about? Build something up on the side. That's all it takes. It can be small. It doesn't have to make money. Just build something.
Yeah. And I mean, if you've been on my show or know me or whatever, I'm looking at Nick's profile right now and I'm thinking, okay, NC State guy, senior, business admin, entrepreneurship. Like, I don't know, man, you look pretty hireable to me. I think you follow the tips that Justin's given you. And in fact, go get that 6 tips on LinkedIn. I think you can improve your profile a little bit. And you've heard my story on that. But demonstrate it is the net there. So Sydney, you've been demonstrating your skills since you got out of high school way back last year. Tell us about the video you created. I'm going to try to find the link to it because I think it's amazing. But tell me how you came up with that and how that came about.
So anyone who's unfamiliar with, I graduated high school in the spring of this past year, and since we weren't able to graduate in person, my principal, Matt White at Apex Friendship High School, he wrote all the seniors' names on a wall in our school, and I got a call one day to my house while we were in quarantine, and my mom said, "It's the principal." I said, "Oh, that doesn't sound good," but he asked me if I'd be interested in showcasing it because we needed a way to show students it in a really, really, I guess, emotional way since we couldn't go and see it in person. And so Mr. White is the one who had the idea based off another principal in Chicago, but I was able to share a video of him creating the wall and the wall itself. It's very, very impressive. And from that, it got a lot of attention because I think it just really resonated with people, especially my senior class and just the area and community at a large. And it was really special for me. And it was a culmination of all the video work I'd done for the school. I'd always did anything for fundraisers or clubs or Teacher of the Year videos. And this was like the final point of it, I guess, that Rob had pulled up here.
So you can totally just go onto my profile, give me a follow if you want to. No need to connect. You can follow my antics, but the video's there. It's also on YouTube, but check it out. I cried every time I watch it. I think it's fantastic work. It's amazing. So other questions here. We've got a bunch of them. I'm like I want to cherry pick them, but I don't do it that way. I just go right at it. HubSpot certification. Let me touch on this before we get to some questions. And this is a great point, Jeff. The stuff that Justin's doing, like basically, creating a podcast and sticking with it. And this is how I connected in part with Justin. I started listening to this guy's podcast and I'm like, I want to be doing that stuff. Like, how is he doing this? And he's just getting it done. And it is the best. I think it's a top 50 podcast, Declassified College. It's like one of the best podcasts, on Spotify that I've listened to. Great job with that. Sydney's demonstrating her skills as well. But these are marketing tactics, right? And in this world, in this pandemic and in your career in the post-pandemic world, you should be getting sales and marketing skills, right? And marketing courses, HubSpot, learning how to use LinkedIn and other platforms. What are they? What's the other? Bookface and these other platforms, how to use their advertising platforms, how to just create good content and put that into your feed, your personal feed. All of these things demonstrate like things that could set you apart very, very easily. And, of course, we want you to check out doworkproject.com. We've got a ton of really good suggestions there as well. So HubSpot certification for sure. There's a whole discussion here going on in the chat, which is great. I love that. I think it's a good feature, and I love to see that going on. And lots of shout outs, Justin, for you, of course. So let's go around the horn really quickly. Justin, what do you like reading or streaming? I don't know what you young people do. Like, what do you like listening to? What albums are you listening to these days?
What albums am I listening to? I've honestly, my time is just filled scrolling on TikTok a lot of the time because we're just trying to grow our TikTok page. So that's what I'm spending the most time on, just trying to consume and figure out what's popping on there so that we can continue to grow our page. So that's what I'm spending the most time right now.
Yeah. So is it how do people find you on TikTok?
Yeah, it's just at Declassified College. Again, just trying to find cool ways to talk about career education. So changing up the game when it comes to this whole space.
I gotta say, I think you're doing a pretty good job on that. I was on TikTok. I mean, Sydney, you told me, I think you were telling me we should be on TikTok, like the Do Work Project. I see you doing things on there. I think that's great. I don't get it. I gotta be honest with you, but I see you have like a ton of people, Justin. Like your following is increasing. And I gotta tell you, I gotta prop you up a little bit more because even my kids that are college age. They looked at your stuff and they're like, that's pretty freaking dope, is what they said. So there you go. There you have it. It's pretty dope.
Appreciate you, Rob.
Yeah, man. So the podcast, you've got a bunch of episodes there. Out of all your podcasts, what's the number one takeaway? I know they're short podcasts, which is my favorite part about them, I guess, but like, what would be your number one episode, and what's the key takeaway from that episode?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting episodes is actually one of the interview episodes that we did early on. It's with a good friend of mine, Eric Custer, who is coined the book professor. And the reason he's the book professor is he's created this program out of Georgetown where he basically turns a student into an author. And he's run, I believe now, over 1,000 students through it. And I think his completion rate of like publishing authors is like 93 or 95%, which is absolutely insane if you think about it, right? He's turning college students into authors, which looks good on their resume, A, but also B, they're able to get speaking engagements or open doors or networking and things of that nature. And I think the number one thing that I got out of that episode was he puts this stat out, and it's very not necessarily hypothetical, but it's sort of out there. But when you think about it, it makes sense, where there's this study done by Purdue University and I believe Gallup, and they talked about how they studied like 30,000 students, and they're trying to figure out what were the two main factors that allowed students to succeed once they graduated. So they studied Ivy League, people with good GPAs, bad GPAs, all the different majors, every single thing. And the only two things that mattered, that they could find like a consistency within it, was if someone had worked on a project in school that was longer than a semester. And then the second one was someone who has built a really good relationship with a professor. And when you think about it, it all makes sense, right? If you can build a good relationship with your professor, that typically means that you're good at networking. Even if it's just one or two relationships, that professor can open up so many doors because they have decades of experience in a specific industry. The second part of working on a project for longer than a semester, again, if you think about it, most projects are going to only last one semester because that's how long classes are. If you're working on something for longer than a semester, that usually means you've done it on your own, by yourself, which means you're a self-starter and you're willing to learn on your own. And I think those are two very key characteristics to seeing if a student is successful. Because if they're a self-starter and they know how to network, that means they're going to be active on LinkedIn. They're going to be creating projects. They're going to be networking during those projects, so that by the time that they graduate, they're not that scrambling senior that's like, oh my God, now I need to start networking. Now I need to work on my resume. When at that point, it's just too late.
Yeah, 100%. And there's a question in here somewhere about resumes, by the way. Like, I've been around the block. Like the amount of time that you are out there, especially students, thinking about your resume or even talking about it. When you email me or message me on LinkedIn about getting help on your resume, I'm like deleting it. I don't mean to be offensive, but don't spend your time on your resume until you really have to, which is when some applicant tracking system needs your information, right? Work on your LinkedIn profile, work on your landing page, work on getting these skills, and work on hustling to connect with people. And I gotta promote our course a little bit. The college Do Work College Career Boot Camp is going to be coming up in January, and it's going to be pretty sick. We're going to teach you how to do all this stuff in depth. It's going to be super smart. I love this. I want to get back to this because one, Jessica, I'm glad you're refreshing your pivot table skills. You can compute my commission later for me. It doesn't look good right now, does it? We gotta work on that. But other things that we'd recommend for college applicants, and this is a great question. I want to go around the horn on this because I got a college applicant, as you guys know, and still can't get her on my show. She's like, I'm not cool enough. But what do you recommend, Sydney? I mean, you got into a bunch of colleges. What was your secret?
It's interesting because I know that this year a lot of schools are going test optional, and I would say in my heart, I just wish that all colleges saw more of a holistic approach to students, and it seems like they were going that way. And then I think maybe with the testing, they might have been pushed further to look at an applicant as a whole, which I think is really beneficial for a lot of students, especially if you aren't that strong test taker. I haven't been inside the college admissions office when they were reading my applications, but something along the lines of what makes a successful student out of college is the clubs and things that I was a part of in high school when I applied to college, there were things that I did for a long time. I had a lot of involvement in, and I think rather than spreading yourself too thin and joining every club on the planet, making a big difference in a couple key clubs or starting something yourself on the side, which shows that entrepreneurial spirit, all that good stuff, that can really set you apart.
That's great advice. And while you didn't sit in college admissions, my guest on Unlock LinkedIn last week did. Jeff Salingo wrote a book on it, and he like embedded himself in a year in these places and basically learned a ton. And I read his book, which I'm so proud of that I read a book. But listen, what he says in a nutshell is exactly what you're saying, Sydney. Plus, like the essay, don't, your ship has sailed maybe, but like if you're starting to apply to college or you're considering writing that essay, it could be a big differentiator, not massive, but a big differentiator. And his advice, Jeff Slingo's advice was don't write like a soliloquy about your whole life, and don't write about like the pandemic and how you're going to change the world. Write about like a day in the life, like something like, something more sort of micro, like what you did today, or, what's an average day look like, or something that's interesting or maybe unique about how you go about coping in the pandemic times. So that's his advice. Justin, aspiring college applicants, what do you got, man?
I mean, so for me, I was terrible when it came to the application process. I was just more of the guy. I was like, okay, I'm gonna apply to these few schools. Whoever accepts me, accepts me. But saying that, because of my content and what I'm spending time on TikTok right now, I'm like really interested to see like all these students, how much time and effort they're actually spending on their college applications. And to talk about your point when it comes to the college essay, that seems to be the number one piece of content that always pops up other than ACT and SAT prep. So when it comes to what I've seen, when it comes to your essay, you're going to want to follow Gohar's Guide on TikTok. It's GOHAR and then guides. He goes to like MIT, I believe, and his brother goes to Harvard, or like vice versa. So they know how to get into the good school, like the really good schools. But he talked about how he basically runs through how to write intros for your essays. And he basically turned baking a cookie into an essay about why someone wants to get into chemistry or something like that. So it's like, how can you take this out there topic of something that's going to grab someone's attention, right? Because if you talk about chemistry, no one cares. But if you talk about baking really nice and gooey cookies and you tie that into the chemistry that's going on, that's like, oh, okay, this is really interesting. And you show that you're smart. So I think finding ways to do that is much better than telling or trying to tell your life story, because everyone is doing that and you want to stand out. And another good person to follow on TikTok when it comes to college stuff is the Kath Path. So like the, and then Kath, Kath, and then Path, Path. Those are two really good people that I always see their content popping off on TikTok.
You're crushing TikTok. You're like part of the TikTok early adopter, like soon to be, like pretty soon you won't even be like, I'll call you up and be like, hey, want to do a podcast? You'd be like, dude, no, I'm sponsored only on TikTok. Like you had 20 grand and we can talk, right? I love it. Novita, like great question. Personal projects such as podcasts on LinkedIn, if it's not professional or major related, let's just go right to the experts here. We'll go to you first, Sydney. You're definitely an expert. Like, what do you put on your LinkedIn profile if it's not like, totally professional related?
I would say that any kind of side project you're doing that's building your skills, I would say that would count as professional development. But for example, if it's a podcast of you and your friends, like, I don't know, that isn't as good of a professional reflection of you, maybe that should be left off. But for me, if there's like a design project that I did for fun, or if there is a podcast with like concrete, like interview style things that shows some nice skills, like that kind of stuff is absolutely a bonus that you could put on your profile, I think.
What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I think if
I
you're
know what
creating
they
something
think.
that
If you create a podcast, you should be putting that freaking thing on your.
no, I mean it depends, right? If you're creating like if you're creating a podcast that's going to put a bad light on you in a professional manner, then you probably don't want to put that out there,
Yep.
right? If you're talking about like partying in college and all these different sort of things, probably not good to share that on LinkedIn. But if you are creating content, something that's more of like a personal endeavor, let's just say you really like animals or something like that, and your podcast is about like all the research that you've done on animals, even though your major might be like business administration or something, I think that's still relevant to put onto your LinkedIn because there are key things that you're doing for that podcast that are related to that future role that you might have in business, right? You can talk about project management, talking about cold outreach, talking about research, all these different sort of things, which don't necessarily seem to be related to like animals, right? But it's related back to your business major that you might want to find a job in later on. So I think as long as you're not touching anything crazy out there that's going to look bad on you, there's always going to be a way to put it onto your profile.
Right on. So I'm gonna plug my side project, which you're both involved in, and I appreciate that. First off, if you want to get these tips, you're gonna get them if you RSVP to this event. But if you're watching like on YouTube, because I'm sending this to YouTube, I'm not sure, testing it out. You could use this form, doworkproject.com, 6 tips, and get that 6 tips. They're pretty good tips. Also, definitely check out the Do Work Project page. This is basically the best thinking and most straight dope advice that we can dole out to students and recent graduates. It is not the content that Uncle Bill or Aunt Sally, while she's doing too much wine at Thanksgiving, is going to be doing, like giving you. So like go here and check this out if you want to do a little like reading. And by the way, be safe, be smart out there. Like it's a crazy world. Wear the mask. Please, like, for the love of God, let's be one. Let's be unified on this. So we covered off on a lot of different things here. Let me see if we have any kind of questions before we get wrapping up. It's 7:47. I'm like, wow, that went by pretty quick. This is actually worth pointing out. These little things like Google Analytics, you guys should be able to knock this out. Like just, put away the Call of Duty, or whatever it is you're doing right now, and get yourself like look into Google Analytics. See if you can figure it out. I did. I tried to. I couldn't. I'm like too much. I have people that do that, right? People that I know that can do that. But in terms of straight out skills, and then I want to top it off by saying sales skills, right? That's an important thing, and that's just a matter of confidence, if you ask me. So, guys, we're just about to wrap up here. Want to go around the horn. The horn's only the 3 of us, but like power tips for like 2 constituencies. People trying to think about what to do next year, college, gap year, whatever. What's your sort of number 1 piece of wisdom? And the second is if you're looking for a job or an internship, the number 1 thing you should be doing like this week. Let's go with you first, Justin.
So when it comes to the things that I would be doing as a student right now, what I would be looking out for is you want to be able to try things. Now, what I mean by that is the analogy I like to use is no vegan ever started out as a vegan as a baby, right? They had to learn how to be a vegan and they had to learn how to like vegetables. No one grew up liking vegetables, but one day you go out there, you figure out that vegetables aren't bad for you. You learn how to cook them, whatever it may be. You're not eating school vegetables anymore. You realize that broccoli doesn't taste that bad. Cauliflower doesn't taste that bad, especially if you add a little bit of salt, pepper, and whatever other seasonings that you want to put on it. Same thing with your career. You don't necessarily know if something is good or bad for you until you actually try it. That's something that I realized with marketing. I started off as an athletic training major because I wanted to be basically a physical therapist for like soccer teams. And I realized bio and chems for me, those like my vegetables as kids, basically. But as I started to get through business and like transfer over to finance, I learned through playing video games that I was really good with numbers. That showed me that I could succeed in business. And that's what led me to marketing. So like, you never know the path that you're going to take, but the only way to know that you're going to get there is if you start trying different things. So try an internship. If you can't get an internship, find a micro internship. If you can't find a micro internship, start a side hustle. If you can't do a side hustle, start a side project. Like, there's all these different sort of things. You have plenty of time. You're stuck at home anyways. You might as well just try different sort of things. Now for the second point, in terms of if I'm looking for an internship this week or this spring, what I'm going to be doing is just set a deadline or like an accomplishment every single day of like, I'm going to connect with 5 people every single day on LinkedIn, right? That's super simple. It takes 5 or 10 minutes, but because we always set like these lofty goals that are sort of intangible, like, oh, I want to get an internship by springtime, that's like super hard to do. But if you set up step 1 of just building out your network, you connect with 5 people every single day. That's like 1,700 connections that you could get over the course of a year. And you're going to be in a way different starting point if you get those 1,500 connections compared to if you don't. So that's a great starting place that I would do if I'm a student right now.
That's totally logical. And by the way, I think like to the point of like, if you can't get an internship or you can't whatever, like you totally could create one. And people like say that and they're like, create your own intern. You totally could do it. I mean, you just got to do a little bit of homework and figure out like, there's definitely people that need stuff. I mean, if you see the stuff that I'm writing right now on the Do Work project, it's not that great. So I would love for someone to say, hey, you seem like, kind of a witty person or trying to be, like, I could come write some witty status updates for you. I'd be like, sure, like whatever. I mean, it beats going to Fiverr and scrolling through all that stuff and finding someone. So, get out there and hustle a little bit and, make it happen. Get your grind up, right? Sydney, you have advice. What are you thinking?
Definitely, I support that you can create your own internship and opportunities. And recently, I was through a connection, an employer needed someone to be a project manager and be in the office every day. And I was like, this isn't really for me right now. And I was like, I see your website. You go and do these construction installations. Like, would you like photo and video work done? Website. And you can pivot. You can always offer your services. It's all about creating value and connecting over that value with others. And then one piece of advice for probably younger students like myself. So when it comes to all the kinds of online platforms we have today, I know we've talked about TikTok a couple times throughout this live stream, but if you find yourself being distracted or consuming a lot and constantly scrolling, you can utilize these social platforms kind of like Justin has to actually like have it be a productive means rather than just have it be a distraction and a complete, like, it sucks all your time away. So whether that's getting on like Dribble, it's a creative community where you can get inspiration, whether that is actually creating a podcast or in more professional TikTok, if you will, that really can help you showcase your skills rather than just waste your time. Try out using the platforms that you already know and love for maybe a more productive approach to it.
Yeah, no, those are great tips. So listen, guys, we're out of time. I want to thank you both so much, Sydney and Justin, for joining. Awesome to have you on the show, of course. I think we're going to be hearing more from you. We're going to follow up for everyone that registered with, make sure you get Justin's 6 tips. We're also going to send you a little intel on the Do Work project course that's coming up. Maybe hook you up with a little bit of a discount on that. It's going to be only 25 people, January 10th, and it's going to be lit. It's going to be good times. Listen, I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for joining the show, the Do Work College Tour podcast, and I'll catch you guys soon. Who knows what kind of microphone I'll have next week, but we'll see you soon. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.